Uh, we went on so long, I don't remember where I put my questions. Hang on.
Want me to do it?
Yeah, you want to read the next? I can't find where I put my questions.
For Gary, in a libertarian society, the non-aggression principle ought to be the basis of governmental law. Don't initiate the use of force against peaceful people. Don't hurt people. Don't take their stuff. What is the basis for law in a
I want
context?
to add one thing that's not usually put in the non-aggression principle: honor your contracts. So those three things, but that's not really entitled. Most libertarians will add that, but that's not really part of the non-aggression principle. I want to add that. Yeah.
I know why it's not added, but
we're I want to add that in. Yeah.
It's not added. I'm not adding it in.
Okay. Without contract, you don't have anything, right? Without on a contract, you have nothing.
I mean, the basis of socialism and communism, was, I think, just excellently put by Karl Marx. I know we've said this before on other debates, but from each according to his ability to each according to his needs. That is like a foundational thought of like how a socialist and then a communist society should function. And the goal of communism is the elimination of exploitation and oppression socially, politically, and economically. It's the elimination of classes, the elimination of the state, the elimination of money. That is only possible through a transitional period of socialism, where the working class gains political and economic power to build up the productive forces, to destroy poverty, and build up enough forces for defense against the inevitable counter-revolution or outside threat. For example, the Soviet Union famously, in its inception, it was invaded by 14 Western countries, one of them being the U.S. Most people don't realize this, but we invaded the Soviet Union actually before with, I think it was like 14,000 Marines, and took actually the major eastern seaport of the Soviet Union. Most people don't know that, but that did happen. And obviously we funded the White Army and funded the Civil War in the Soviet Union after that, which was a deeply anti-Semitic force that actually went around committing massacres and atrocities against Jewish people. So yeah, that's like the goal. For the basis of law, it's again the first one, but law is, for example, the Constitution, the law, right? It's going to be socially determined, so to speak, right? So Cuba, China, the Soviet Union, they could have different statutes on their legislation, so to speak, right? But
there's a fundamental basis.
The moral basis is from each according to his ability to each according to his needs. Like that is it. That's why we have the protection of human necessities like shelter, like food, work. People need to work to survive. People need to make money to survive because we're still in a system that has money. That's just an unfortunate reality.
Which was the last question. Do they? What if they don't have to? Do they still have to? But that's for the last question.
That's part two, Gary.
That's part two. So I guess my last question here, right? The non-aggression principle, which basically says don't initiate force against peaceful people. Right? Don't hurt people. Don't take their stuff. And I would throw it onto your contracts. Do you have a problem with that?
No, but I think the idea of that still in that as like the end goal, I think is very limited. And I also think it doesn't account for the reality when there is that sort of monopoly of violence, and then that monopoly of violence is coming from a ruling minority class. So do we that violence is often indirect too, right? Like poverty, I would say, is violence. The idea that we have a system where people go hungry, people don't have a home, people don't have access to medicine, basic medicine, that is violence, because we have seen systems where that's not the case. So
I would say that that's man's natural state, and then we can use things, not only capitalism, but like capitalism, to progress from that. But in its barest sense, man is born impoverished.
But the reality is, Gary, like, look around you. Like, we're not humans from 400,000 years ago. Like, we're not cavemen. Like, clearly, human nature, whatever we want to call that, which communists reject as an idea, is ever changing, is ever growing, and is never static. So human nature now versus 400,000 years ago is different because the material conditions are different, Gary. Around, like, our natural state is not to have a computer. Our natural state is not to have a car, a train, all this stuff.
Right. I don't think if you don't have a train or a computer, if someone doesn't provide you with something, if you're not provided something, that's not violence, right? Like you don't have a claim to anyone else's property or anyone else's.
But Gary, let's say there's 10 of us on an island, right? Let's say I have declared myself leader of the island, and I have the 9 of you go do crops or go hunt a pig or something, and then I take half of that food. Or
You don't touch my food.
But
this is why I believe in an armed society. You're actually not touching my food.
But that's what we have now. We have people that go and make food, but then they're paid so little that they are barely able to afford food and housing.
We had a society largely, especially in the South, of a huge amount of sharecroppers, which is basically what you're, right? I mean, that's basically what you're getting at, right? Basically, you're saying, over an island of 10 people, and you can kill a pig, or get some eggs from a chicken or whatever. You can keep a small portion of it.
And Ross Public on the chat with a good point. In a world with enough food, withholding food is violence. Like, we produce enough food right now to feed 10 billion people, and then we just waste enough of it to where that is forced scarcity. People don't have the food to survive. So that, when we have 8 million people die every year in the world due to hunger.
I was going to say, where? Not here. Okay, in the world. Okay. But
people die here of hunger. That's not
how many. Can someone fact check how many people in the U.S. died of hunger in 2021 or 2022?
If it's one, that's too many.
I agree.
Because we have enough food where everyone can be overfed.
And I agree.
We have a minority of people in power that say, no, the masses of people that actually work the land, toil the soil to produce the food, you do not have ownership of that. We do. And we're going to make a profit off of it. And then we're going to throw a bunch of it away. So it's forced scarcity. That's what's happening. That's violence.
Again, not giving someone something that's not theirs. I don't understand how that's violence, but I would agree with you, right? Like I as a human being, as a child in the image of God, I have the responsibility to feed people. I would agree with that.
Would you say that's initiation of force?
No, because me not giving
again, people that work the land to make the food don't own the food. Somebody else owns it that does not work that land, that then goes and sells that food for a profit and gives those workers barely enough money to survive. And in often cases, because we have 8 million people dying of hunger, they don't survive. So
did they voluntarily agree to this job?
No, nobody voluntarily decides to be exploited. That's just the state of being. A worker in Latin America under a U.S. neocolony, right? All the industries are super exploited. There's not one there. They all get used for resource extraction.
Right, mining for rare minerals, right? Like, this is the worst of it, right? Like,
just keep it on food. It happens too. Corn, peaches, whatever.
Don't eat corn.
That gets produced in another country. Those workers don't have ownership of it. It's owned by somebody else in a different country even. And then they make the profit off of it. And then again, we have people in the global South largely dying or being in a state of hunger. That's not a choice. That's just a state of being. That's what exists. There's no other choice, Gary. There's no other paradise job where they're not exploited, where their resources aren't extracted to another imperial country. That's just the state of being. Is that not an initiation of force?
Well, I mean, again, I don't understand how there's not another option, right? There are people in those countries that don't do that, right? There's not everyone in that country.
What do you mean?
So give me a country where every single person
is exploited.
Yeah.
Any of the Francophone countries. So, for example, any of the countries where were colonized by France that belong under the Francophone umbrella, their entire economy is held in French banks. Their financial reserves are held in French banks. The mining industry, the agricultural industry, that is all used for resource extraction to other imperial countries, other Western countries.
So,
I would say every major industry is used as a tool for neo-colonial extraction.
So Haiti or Cameroon, countries like that.
Yes. For example, we have the U.S. government. Hillary Clinton specifically went and lobbied the Haitian government to decrease the minimum wage. The U.S. government had that power. So there is no other option. When your minimum wage is 50 cents and then moves down to 30 cents, and it was a directive from another government that's not your own, but how is that not initiation of violence?
Okay, but that's the government initiating force against you.
That's what I'm saying.
If you want to say that, right, then I would say get the government out of it, eliminate the minimum wage, and let people negotiate their own wage, and that would solve the problem.
So if the working class, as a result of that, decided we will now take political and economic power and create a system, a society where that doesn't happen, is that an initiation of force, or is that a reaction to the initiation of force?
If individuals wanted to work together to say we're going to demand better wages or better conditions, that's free market at work. I love it.
But it's not the free market. But
it is the free market.
We'll get into that in the second
part. That's the second part, yeah.
Second part. Everyone that listened to this, Ross, Unlikable Airwaves, thank you. I really appreciate you guys tuning in. Everyone go well. And for those that are interested, I know it's not a political channel, but Gary's Texas boxing scene. For those that are curious about boxing, Gary's always at events, getting interviews, doing great work. He has an article now out on TexasBoxingScene.com about a fighter, Omar Juarez. There's a documentary coming out about him, so definitely check that out. And obviously, me and Gary have Mixed Combat Radio, which is a weekly boxing podcast over on YouTube and Twitch. So on Twitch is under the same umbrella, Turning Down Network. So if you're on Twitch, like Ross, Unlikable Airwaves, Frank, Hookups in the chat, that's a weird name, probably a bot. You guys, don't worry. When me and Gary are not live, because we don't do live anymore for that.
Yeah.
So
only on Patreon.
Yeah, if you're on Twitch, then if you want to see me and Gary talk about boxing and stuff, youtube.com/Mixed Combat Radio. Fun stuff. We're also joined by my lovely partner, Melody Joy, from the Beauty of Boxing, beautyofboxing.com. Go check it out and support. Love you too. What else? This is part one, I guess. Gary has to run. We have, 4 more questions? Technically, 1, 2, 3, 4 more questions to run through, and we'll probably come back later this week. Gary, let the people know where to find you, even though I already did it.
Yeah, you'll find me all from social media, 3Boxing Black. You also find me at Texas Boxing Scene on YouTube. From Texas to the world. Texas is still not a country. Can you believe that?
It won't be.
We could do a show on that. Within a couple of years.
Read Gerald Horn's book on Texas. I'll send you a link.
What is it about the independence of Texas, or is it about yeah? Okay. Well, is it the slavery thing? Is it that?
I'm just saying, check it out, man.
Okay. All
right. Find me at Matt Hunter and share all social media platforms. Like, find each other, show all that fun stuff. Peace.
Thank you.